I'm guessing that it might be important to have the recording of this as well. So as I was mentioning, in the financial sector, whole lot of assignment transactions happen either by way of loan sales or by way of securitization or by way of direct assignments or purely commercial assignment of receivables by MSME vendors. And MSME vendor may not, I think going forward, MSME vendors may find it far more preferable to use threads. I'm guessing you're all familiar with threads as a platform where receivables are traded. So threads may be far more prominent a platform for transactions to happen rather than the traditional bank loans. Because if I go for a bank loan, I'm actually paying a rate of interest which is fixed today. Threads is more opportunistic because depending on the liquidity in the financial system, I might be able to get funding at a much cheaper rate. Supposing the financial market is currently liquid, there's a lot of money in the market, I might actually be able to obtain funding at much cheaper rate using the Threads platform. So there might be various reasons for people to continue to use assignment of receivables. It can happen for various reasons. So our objective here is to see what exactly is the meaning of assignment of receivables. How does assignment differ from several things which are seen as very close to assignments? So assignment versus lots of transactions that sound similar but might be different. What are the basic rules of assignment? And then we come specifically to several transaction types. For example, what happens in case of factoring transactions? What happens in case of securitization transactions? What happens in case of, let's say, direct assignment transactions? What happens, say, in case of an assignment for the purpose of creation of security and so on? So there might be lots of different variants of assignments, and we would like to talk about those as well. That's our objective for today's discussion. So let's start with first the meaning of the word assignment. The word assignment is used in context of receivables, intangible assets, incorporeal assets or intangible assets. We use the word assignment in context of such intangible or incorporeal assets. For example, when we talk about a trademark, we talk about assignment. When we talk about copyrights, we talk about assignment. When we talk about receivables, we use the word assignment. I don't, however, assign my car. If I'm selling my car or I'm selling my house, I don't use the word assignment because that's a physical, tangible assets. Tangible assets, we don't use the word assignment. We commonly use the word sale. Now, in case of the so-called assignment of receivables as well, what I'm actually doing is I might be selling the receiver because there might be a sale involved here, but the technique or the methodology used for achieving the sale is assignment. So assignment is the process or the method by which receivables or so-called actionable claims. Actionable claims is the legal word. In this room, we have a lot of people with a lot of legal background. So I'll still have to use some bit of legalese, some bit of legal jargon. So we're talking about an actionable claim or a receivable which is typically assigned. Assignment is the word used in context of receivables. Assignment can also be used, as I mentioned, for lots of other intangible assets as well. Now, assignment of receivable versus assignment of a contract. This is something that we can discuss right here. And of course, we'll need to refer to that later as well. Assignment of a receivable, assignment of a benefit of a contract. I have entered into a contract certain benefits. For example, from the contract, I get some receivables over time. My contract gives some receivables over time. That's the case of assignment of benefits from the contract. The contract is leading to certain benefits, and I'm assigning the benefits out of a contract. That's the case of assignment of receivables or assignment of usufructs or assignment of benefits of a contract. I cannot, however, normally speaking, assign a contract. A contract can't be assigned. Benefits of a contract can be assigned. Now, I'm not meaning to say that a contract can never be assigned. I can definitely assign a contract as well. But for assigning a contract, what I would need is the consent of the counterparty. I can never assign a contract unless the counterparty agrees, because contract is a bilateral contract. There cannot be a unilateral transfer of a contract without the concurrence or consent of a counterparty. This is an important point. Whereas if what I have is a benefit from a contract, a benefit of a contract is like a property. Like I can sell my car, I can sell my computer, I can sell my belongings. I did not need to go and ask anyone for that. Similarly, if I'm selling benefits of a contract, a benefit of a contract is as good a property like any other property. In English law, in so-called common law principles, benefits arising from a contract is similar to a property right, and like I can sell any of my properties, I can sell my receivables or benefits of a contract as well. But a contract itself is a bundle of mutual obligations, and the question of therefore transferring a contract would not arise unless I take the counterparty also into contract. So contracts can be transferred only with the concurrence of the counterparty, but benefits of a contract can be transferred without any concurrence of the counterparty at all. So the typical picture of an assignment of receivables would be what? For example, I mean, let's say think it does not have to be in case of loan transactions. I've taken an example of a loan. Any receivable, let's say I'm a vendor, I made a sale and I've got money to receive from the customer. I have an accounts receivable or an amount receivable from a customer. I can sell that, I can transfer that to a buyer. Similarly, if I get a loan, what I have basically is I have loan receivables. Have I transferred the contract of loan itself? My answer would be no. I'm not transferring the loan contract. It's a misconception to say that the loan contract is being transferred. That's a wrong way of looking at it. What I'm transferring is I'm transferring the receivables from the loan. As between the lender and the borrower, there was a bilateral contract. So that's still a bilateral contract. The lender and the borrower had a kind of a relationship. Relationships cannot be transferred. Transactions can be transferred. Benefits of a contract. Usufructs or benefits of a contract can be transferred. So there's a loan contract. I'm the lender. There's a borrower. The borrower has committed to pay me certain amount of money over a period of time. It may be one payment. It may be a series of payments. So it might be one single cash flow, series of cash flows. What I'm therefore transferring is the cash flows arising from the loan contract. I'm not transferring the loan contract itself. Transfer of loan contract versus transfer of benefits of a contract, that's a key difference, and it's important to understand the difference because very often people seem to be missing the difference between transfer of a contract. Transfer of a contract is what I would call a case of novation. Novation, I'm coming to that very shortly, but what we're talking about here is assignment of a receivable, assignment of a benefit of a contract. So one of the common questions that comes is, if I have a receivable, do I require the concurrence? Do I require the concurrence of the person? Do I require the concurrence of the person from whom the receivable is due? Do I have to ask for the concurrence of the person? Like in case of, let's say, I will receive from a debtor. Am I dependent on the concurrence of the debtor for transferring receivables? Normally speaking, the answer is no, unless the contract puts it otherwise. If the contract by default is silent about it, every receivable is like a property. Like every property is transferable. Benefit from a contract is like property, it's a property right, and therefore that is also transferable. I must very quickly submit to all of you that we will allow intermittent breaks for people to ask questions. As of now, I mean, please park your hold your questions. We'll very quickly come to it as we still have time for a pause to have some questions. But as of now, let me keep moving forward. So as I said, types of assignment of receivables. Assignment could be primarily of two types: assignment by way of sale, assignment by way of security interest. Mostly in our conversation for this topic today, we'll be concerned with assignment by way of a sale. That would mean our intent is to actually sell down the receivable. We're trying to sell off the receivable. That's assignment by way of sale. What we're meaning is we're using technique of assignment for causing a sale. I'm sure you can understand a sale is always an absolute sale. Absolute, that is for good, for all time to come. The benefits and the burdens of the receivables are moving to the buyer. The buyer is acquiring all my rights in the receivables. That's assignment by way of a sale. However, it's also possible to do an assignment by way of security interest. The meaning of assignment by way of security interest would be what? I'm assigning a receivable for the purpose of securing a loan. For example, I might have taken a loan and I'm creating a mortgage. I'm creating a security interest on the receivables. I have certain receivables. I'm creating a security interest on that.
पानी कहाँ गया है यहाँ से?
Right. So once again, I would just quickly reiterate my request to all those people who might have walked in later is please do keep yourself completely on mute mode. All of you kindly keep yourself muted, both audio as well as video, and we will definitely allow space for interaction, probably by chat messages or maybe by vocal voice messages. But let's come to that later. As of now, once again, reiterating my request, please everyone keep your audios and videos muted. So I said we can do an assignment by both security interest as well. Assignment does not necessarily mean a sale. Assignment could also be done for the sake of creating security. That would mean here the assignee is not a buyer. The assignee is simply a charge holder. The assignee simply has a charge on the receivables, right? The assignee is not a buyer. So that's also a possibility. I can create assignment by way of security interest. Assignment of present receivables or assignment of future receivables. Can I assign something which I have right to right now? I have a right to something right away. There's a present concurrent right. The amount is payable in future. I'm not saying the debt is payable right away. The debt is that there's a so there's a debt right away, and the debt is payable in future. It's a present debt. The debt is payable. The debt is existing right now. The debt is payable at some point of time in future. I can still assign the similar. The next question here would be: can I assign?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir, can you mute everybody from your side?
I've done that time and again, sir. Now I don't know. Somehow it seems that the system is permitting people to unmute themselves. So from my side, I've done that. But I think let's allow to move. I do understand that in a group of we already have 100 people inside. There are some people still waiting outside, which we are not able to admit them because there is limitation. So I'm trying to take care of it. But well, please do. In the meantime, please do. It's a large group. There are 100 people already inside. So if there are people who are still unable to understand how to mute themselves, we need to still allow them to understand that. So I'm once again reiterating my request. Please, everyone, mute yourself. I'm back on the presentation once again. I'm hoping you all will please cooperate and allow everyone to focus on the top by keeping yourself completely muted. So we said present receivables, future receivables. The receivable is not even in existence right now. The receivable is not in existence right now. Can I still assign it? Let me give an example. So I will give 3 examples. Let's say I have a loan which is already payable. The loan has become payable. The loan is payable, let's say even today. Can I assign that loan? The loan has become payable right now. Can I assign it? Of course I can assign it. I have a loan which had become payable 6 months back. The loan is currently an NPA, non-performing asset. Can I still assign it? Of course I can assign it. I have a loan which is payable 5 years hence. I have given the loan. The loan is payable 5 years hence. The loan is repayable after 5 years. It's an amount payable in future. Can I still assign it? Of course I can assign it. And let me give
आवाज नहीं आ रहा है लेकिन वो टुंग 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 हो रहा है।
सर विकास अग्रवाल जी हैं कोई, उनका ऑडियो और वीडियो ऑन है, तो आप रिक्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं सर।
Vikas ji, if you're able to hear me and hear others, please do cooperate and put your audios and videos both off. And like I said, intermittently कोई interesting sound सुनने को मिलती है, ऐसे समझिए ना प्रकृति की देन है, बीच में आवाज आती है ना, तो इसको भी इसका आनंद लीजिए। अभी तो इतना कुदरत का माहौल है, बीच में चिड़िया भी बोलती है, कौवा भी बोलता है, तो ठीक है, बीच में एक आध पार्टिसिपेंट भी को बोले, ठीक है, अच्छी इंटरेस्टिंग आवाज। मेरी आवाज सुन के अकेले बोर नहीं होंगे, बीच में दूसरी आवाजें सुनते रहेंगे, मेरे ख्याल से अच्छा। Let's keep on. I would, as I said, as an administrator here, I tried to muting, but I'm sure there is some way by which people can unmute. Though the control that I'm time and again facing is let everyone be muted, and the right of unmuting is also with me, but somehow I'm not sure there's probably some escape route here. हम लोग इतने शार्प प्रोफेसर हैं ना, कोई नहीं कोई escape route निकाल लेते हैं, ठीक है। Present receivables, future. So I'll give an example of future receivables. The loan 5 years hence. Can I assign it? Of course I can assign it. Now let me give a totally different example. I have a tall road. Let's say the concessionaire of a toll right over a toll road, and I would be entitled to receive toll receivables. So the question is, can I assign those toll receivables as well? Can those toll receivables?
The mic is on, but it's on your side.
Sir, I think we are now good to go because people all are muted. I'm just checking. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So it's mentioning future receivables. Now think of a toll receivable, something which is payable in future, for which there is no right now. Right now, all I have basically is a toll receivable. Traffic will move into the toll infrastructure. That's when the receivables will come. Receivables will come by way of toll collections over a period of time. Can I transfer that receivable as well? Can I transfer something which is not even in existence right now? The question basically is, can I transfer something which is not in existence right now? So there also the answer is basically yes. Now let me just quickly add up something further on that. Okay, I think we're back here. So I'm requesting once again, I mean, has audios and videos on, can you please mute yourself? It would be difficult for me to travel across the entire room and see who is keeping still oneself on. So I hope all of you can cooperate and do that. Now, I was saying future receivables as well. As long as the future receivables are from identifiable infrastructure, the future receivables are from an identifiable infrastructure, they also can be transferred. It's possible to transfer.
कॉल तो ज्वाइन करोगे टीम कॉल?
नहीं, मैं नहीं करूंगी ज्वाइन, नहीं करूंगी ना ज्वाइन टीम कॉल, नहीं करूंगी। ये कर रही हूँ ना वेबिनार आज।
ये कब तक चल रहा है
ये चलेगा अभी, लंबा है, 1-1.5 घंटे का है।
तो मैं ग्रुप में मैसेज डाल देता हूँ। ज़्यादा बेटर है।
चलेगा। एक बार ये मेरा खत्म होगा ना तो एक बार मैं कॉल करती हूँ आपको बाद में।
ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है, नो प्रॉब्लम, चलेगा।
निर्मल सर, पूरा पर्पस वेबिनार का डिफीट हो रहा है। या तो अभी आप एक काम करिए, दीजिए सबको कि उस टाइम तक सब ऑनलाइन आ जाए।
I believe everyone has been unmuted by mistake.
Is that better? I'm guessing that's better. Okay. So yeah, please do pardon for that bit of control issue. You're right. In fact, by instead of muting everyone, I unmuted everyone by mistake. So sorry about that. Right. moving forward. So he said even future receivables, as long as the future receivables are from identifiable receivables, even those also can be transferred. This future receivables are transferable as long as they are from a source which is identifiable. I can transfer future receivables from an existing source. The source must be existing, the source must be ascertainable, and in that case the receivables can be transferred. If the source itself is not ascertainable or the source itself is not existing, in that case there is no question of transferring. I'll give an extremely layman's example. I have a mango tree. The mangoes to come on the mango tree can still be transferred, but the mangoes to come on a mango tree which is not yet in existence cannot be transferred. If I have the mango tree itself, I can sell the mango crop. That's quite common thing in Western world to happen. If I don't even have the mango tree, that would mean I'm trying to sell a dream. So there are people who sell dreams as well, but in world of finance and world of law, I cannot have a legal sanctity to transfer of dreams. So it's something which is not existing. Future receivables from a future asset not transferable. Future receivables from an existing asset are still transferable. Now these are concepts which sound similar, but they are different from assignment. So let me very quickly run past them. Assignment of receivables versus assignment of a contract. Assignment of receivables versus assignment of contract is something that we discussed already. So I'm parking it here because this is something that we discussed. Assignment of receivables versus sale of an asset. Assignment of receivables versus sale of an asset. Take an example. I have leased out an asset and I have leased receivables. Now, one option is that I'm selling the leased receivables. That's part one. Part two is I'm selling the leased asset itself. If I'm selling the leased asset itself, along with the leased asset go the leased receivables. That is not a case of assignment of receivables. What I'm actually doing is I'm selling the asset. Along with the asset, the fruits of use also go. Same example as the mango tree. I'm selling the tree itself, the fruits go along with it. I'm selling the fruits of the tree, that's the case of sale of receivables. So sale of leased receivables versus sale of the asset itself. The sale of an asset is a case of transfer of a physical asset, not transfer of a receivable. So that is something that we would like to distinguish. Assignment of receivables versus negotiation of a negotiable instrument. Now that's a very common concept once again. Negotiable instruments. For example, bill of exchange is a negotiable instrument. A promissory note is a negotiable instrument. So if you're transferring a bill of exchange, you're transferring a negotiable instrument. That is transfer of an NI, endorsement of an NI. That's not sale of a receivable or assignment of receivable once again. That's a very important distinction because very often we forget the distinction between sale of receivables versus transfer of negotiable instrument. If the instrument itself is negotiable, how did the instrument become negotiable? What is the key feature of negotiability? Negotiability is a promise made to world at large. In case of a debtor versus creditor contract, the creditor is entitled to collect money from the debtor. The debtor owes an obligation to the creditor. It's a bilateral contract. But in negotiable instruments, whoever is the so-called holder in due course of the negotiable instrument will be entitled to the money. So the money becomes a promise to the world at large to any person who is holder in due course. Then that's a case of a negotiable instrument, and that is a separate exercise altogether. That's not a case of assignment of receivables. Last and once again very important, assignment of receivables versus sale of a marketable instrument. Let's say I'm selling a bond. Selling of a bond is sale of a security. It's not sale of a contractual right, because the obligation there as well is embedded into an instrument. The instrument in question is a bond. Bond has an intrinsic or inherent right of the holder of the security to a money, to a sum of money. So the right is embedded in the instrument itself, and the instrument by design is marketable. So marketable instrument, for example, a transferable loan instrument, a transferable bond, a transferable debenture, versus assignment of a receivable. In case of a receivable, you're still transferring a contractual debt, whereas in case of transfer of a bond or transfer of a transferable loan instrument, you're actually transferring what is a transferable security. Now, very, very quick distinction between some other very related concepts, extremely important, because once again, in practice, we need to distinguish between these concepts. The concept here is assignment versus novation. Novation basically is what? If you recall, when we started off, we said a contract cannot be assigned. A contract can be novated. benefits of a contract can be assigned, but a contract itself is not assignable, as a contract is a mutual, bilateral contract. It's a mutual bundle of obligations, so contracts cannot be transferred. They can be novation of a contract. So novation obviously will require the consent of the counterparty. If, like in my example here, if the debtor and the creditor mutually agree, the debtor and the creditor agree that henceforth the payments will be made to the assignee, that's a case of novation. In case of an assignment, the creditor who is entitled to the sum of money directs the debtor to make a payment to the assignee. Debtor has no business objecting to that. Creditor is transferring his property. There is no concurrence of the debtor at all required. That's a case of an assignment. But case of innovation will be the creditor approaches the debtor and the debtor varies the underlying contract. That novation is similar to variation of a contract. The debtor varies the original contract and says, instead of paying the money to you, I will pay the money to the assignee. Rajendra Pradhanji, I'll come back to you shortly. So I do understand that you have a question. So give me some time. In next about few minutes, I'll take a small pause to take questions here. So difference between assignment versus novation. In case of an assignment, it's a property right of the assigner. The transferor is transferring his property right, irrespective of the concurrence of the debtor. I am only notifying the debtor. Notification of debtor also very often may or may not be done. That's a very important point once again. I'll quickly maybe touch upon that as well as we discuss the law of assignments. So novation basically is we going back to the original contract and saying the contract now stands modified, and as by way of modification of contract, the assignee has now become the payee. We modify the contract to make the assignee the payee. That's a case of novation of a contract. Novation is not a case of assignment, because what we're doing is we're going back to the contract and make the assignee, the intended assignee, we're making him the payee. Participation contract. Participation contract means what? For example, the creditor has a sum of money to receive from the debtor, and the creditor says, from out of what I will receive, I'll give, for example, 90% to the assignee. That is, I'm creating a right against me. Out of what I'm collecting, I'll pay 90% to the assignee. That's a case of participation right or sub-participation right. The so-called participation certificates. In the banking world, we have interbank participation certificates. That's a case of participation right. That's not a case of assignment. That's a case of creation of participating rights. If the loan instrument itself was transferable loan, now if the way the loan instrument was devised or designed, the instrument says the borrower commits to make payment to anyone who is the holder of the instrument. For the time being, whoever is the holder of the instrument, the borrower commits to make payment to the holder of the instrument. That is called a transferable loan instrument, which becomes a case of a security, and therefore that is also not a case of assignment. Declaration of trust. For example, in this case, once again, the creditor says, I am holding this receivable in trust for you. So the creditor has now become a trustee for the assignee. It's not a case of assignment. The receivable still legally belongs to the creditor. The creditor is now saying that what belongs to me, I am holding in trust for the assignee. Same as saying, if I own this house, henceforth I'll own the house in trust for somebody else. I'm not transferring the property. The house is still mine, but what I'm transferring is, I'm transferring the beneficial interest in property to make the assignee the beneficial owner. So beneficial interest stands transferred. However, the does not stand transferred. That's a case of declaration of trust. So each of these are shades of differences based on what should circumstances in particular cases. We might use different devices. Now I'm coming to the basic ingredients or basic requirements of assignment of receivables. And I do understand that people have questions here, but I'll just take few more minutes before I come to questions, because I think the questions are better clubbed together once we discuss the basic concept of assignments. So let me very, very quickly come to some basic ingredients or some basic conditions of transfer of receivables. These are all conditions of a valid transfer of receivables or assignment of receivables. I am using the word transfer of receivables or sale of receivables or assignment of receivables interchangeably. Though the legal method is one of assignment, but I'm using each of these words interchangeably as we go. So for assignment of receivables to happen, like I mentioned, they can be assignment of receivables at present, they can be assignment of receivables in future, as long as the future receivables are from an identifiable or existing infrastructure. Receivables could be identified. Can we do a transfer unassignable receivables. For example, if I have got, let's say, receivable book of, let's say, 50 crores, and I can say I am transferring 30 crores out of my 50 crores worth book without identifying what am I transferring. I'm not identifying what I'm transferring. I'm simply doing a generic, let's say, monetary indication of I'm transferring a portion of my loan book or my receivable book without identifying what am I transferring. This is so-called transfer of an unascertainable asset. Transfer of unascertainable asset is normally not a proper sale because that creates a security interest but cannot create an ownership interest, as you cannot have transfer of unascertainable interest. Unascertainable receivables being transferred will not be a case of sale. It would be a case of security interest though, but will not be a case of sale. Normally speaking, the time for payment of receivables should also be certain. Either the receivables should have become already due or the receivables should be becoming due at a particular point of time. Another normal rule in English law, traditional English law, has been that when you're transferring receivables, the whole of the receivables should be transferred. Proportional transfers are normally seen as creating joint ownership rights. If I'm transferring a proportion of the receivables, when we talk about proportional transfers can take many shapes. For example, I could say I have receivable over the next 36 months and I'm entitled to receive, for example, let's say I say I'm entitled to receive say 50 crores over next 36 months. I'm entitled to receive 50 crores over next 36 months. Now I could do a partial transfer. Let's say I transfer 30 crores out of that. That's proportional transfer. I can also say I'm entitled to receive the money over next 36 months, but I transfer only the first 24 months, retaining the balance tail of 12 months. That's also a case of proportional transfer. Or I can say, well, I have an interest of 12% out of the loan. I transfer 10% out of that, and I'm retaining the so-called IO tranche, IO strip of 2%, interest only strip of 2%. That's also a case of proportional transfer. So normally speaking, proportional transfers are not seen as creating perfected right in favor of the buyer. So normally speaking, that's not typically preferred in English law. However, the way the law has now progressed over time, we more and more encourage proportional transfers as well. Even though in case of proportional transfer, that transferor and transferee become joint owners because it's not transfer of a whole, it's transfer of a part. The transferee basically become joint owners. However, that is not seen as a great, hurdle in practice because, as you understand, those of you who are from world of direct assignment of securitization, you will understand that there is necessarily a 10% retention in case of all direct assignments. So there necessarily has to be a proportional transfer only. Another very important point, as we talk about assignment, we're talking about assignment of rights and not obligations. Obligations cannot be transferred. I can transfer my rights, I cannot transfer my obligations. This is in tune with what we said earlier. I can transfer benefits of a contract, I cannot transfer a contract. A contract is a bundle of mutual obligations. Transfer of obligations is not allowed because a contract can actually consist of obligations, and obligations are not, I'm sure, bit of intuition all of you can understand. If I'm obliged to do something in favor of someone, how can I transfer my obligation? If obligations were transferable, life will be very easy. So I cannot transfer my obligations. And the next point, which is very, very clearly connected, and that's also something that you can appreciate very easily. If the right is connected with the right of set-off, it's a very common issue in financial sector. And I know in the room there are a lot of people from the financial sector, and they'll be able to capture what I'm saying very, very quickly. Very often there is a right to receive which is coupled with an obligation as well. Right of set-off. For example, I've given a loan of 100 rupees. I am holding a deposit of 20 rupees with me. Can I transfer the loan independent of the deposit? Can it be such that I've transferred the loan but I hold back the deposit? If the right of receiving and the obligation to set it off against the right were both inseparable, then there is no question of transferring the right without transferring the obligation. And as I mentioned, obligations are not transferable without the concurrence of the counterparty. So normally speaking, the rule will be that if I'm transferring some receivables, the receivables must be free from a right of set-off. This is one of the very common conditions you will see in any deed of assignment or document of assignment. in the very detailed representations and warranties clause. There are a lot of legal people in the room, so you'll appreciate that you draft out that detailed reps and warranties clause of the deed of assignment. You'll always say that the receivables are free from a right of set off. If the receivables have a right of set off, then receivables being transferred without taking care of the right of set off is similar to transferring a right with a concurrent obligation as well, because the set off becomes an obligation, and as I mentioned, obligations cannot be transferred. I'll pause here for a minute to see what questions people have at this stage. I can see that there are some questions already. So if somebody wants to raise a question at this stage, maybe there's the time to raise question. I'll come back to, so I have a question already. I think Kamal Bhatia had something to say. There is a question from Mr. Nagaraj. So Mr. Nagaraj would like to speak out the question quickly, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation so far. Very lucid. One quick question. The Companies Act allows shareholder to direct pay dividend due to him or her to another person. Now, is this an assignment of benefit?
Got your question, Mr. Nagaraj. That's a mandate. I am entitled to a dividend. I am mandating the company to make that payment to, let's say, my mandatee. I am not transferring the right to the dividend. The mandate is simply a mandatee. That's not an assignment. That's simply a payment mandate. So the so-called, let's say, escrows. Now, assignment versus escrow right. That's another very important distinction. We should have actually covered that, and very important distinction. So good point, Mr. Nagaraj, you mentioned. Let's say I have a receivable from a particular debtor, and now I say that the collections from the receivable will be put into an escrow, and from the escrow someone will have a right over the escrow. What I'm actually doing, I'm not creating or transferring a right over the receivable. I'm actually creating a right over the escrow account. The money comes into the escrow. From the escrow beneficiary will have a right of withdrawing the money. So difference between a mandate for payment or difference between an escrow mandate will be that in case of an assignment of receivable, the legal claim over the receivable itself has gone to the assignee. The assignee can claim the receivable as a matter of his property now. If the creditor has assigned the receivable to an assignee, the assignee now becomes the creditor. The assignee now steps into the shoes of creditor and becomes entitled to that very money to which the creditor was originally entitled to. Whereas an escrow is simply a payment mechanism. Escrow is simply a cash flow trapping mechanism, a payment mechanism, and therefore merely creating an escrow does not mean there is creation of rights over the receivable. Shailendra Kothari ji also has a question to ask. Shailendra ji, if you can probably go ahead. And I've got a question from as well, so I'll come to that as well. But Shailendra ji, in the meantime, very quickly.
Hi, Shailendra here. Regarding the assignment, like the lease rental discounting is same as assignment of receivables?
The idea of discounting of any lease receivable is to pass on the right over the receivable to the so-called assignee. I mean, one thing is that I'm simply discounting. Discounting meaning I'm getting paid for the receivable. Now, if I'm actually needing to transfer the right over the receivable to the beneficiary, to the person paying me, to the person buying the receivables, then the intent is to assign. The intent of assignment basically is that am I needing to transfer the right title and interest in the receivable to the assignee? If yes, that's a case of assignment. I have a question from Apurva Sharma ji also, but in the meantime, Chandra Save has put a question in the chat, so let me just quickly go through that. What's the difference between assignment of receivables and invoice financing? Invoice financing requires factoring license. Factoring is something that I'll come back to separately. It's a very intriguing subject. It's extremely, if you ask me, have I understood the factoring? My answer would be no. So I can, outrightly admit that anyone who says that he understands the factoring law is actually telling a lie. That's a law which is beyond understanding. It's a law which is completely left its purpose. The purpose is left somewhere and the law has traveled into a completely different direction. I'll come to that, Chandra Saveji, I'll come to that question. Invoice financing meaning what? I have raised an invoice. I go to a lender and the lender gives me money against the invoice. The lender is the idea basically is what? Idea is not to acquire the receivable. Idea is to simply give a loan against the invoice. When I began, I distinguished between assignment by way of sale and assignment by way of security interest. So mostly what it seems like is it's a case of borrowing on the security of a receivable rather than transferring the legal title over the receivable. But as I said, mostly it will depend on what your intent and what your documentation is. There are shades of difference. Each of these transactions are distinguished by minor shades of difference. But in the meantime, let's hear Apurva Sharma who has a question to ask. And I've got several questions in chat box as well, so I'll come to those as well. Apurva, if you can put.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Hi, sir. My question is similar to the line you
Louder, please.
answered, that if suppose there is an NBFC. Hello, am I audible?
Loud. Apurva, a bit loud.
Hello.
Try to be a bit louder, Apurva.
So the video has paused. Sorry, I'll repeat my question. It's similar to what you just explained. Suppose if there is an NBFC which has discounted invoices from a vendor or from a customer, that NBFC holds the right to assign those receivables, like in terms of factoring, which you just mentioned. If they have factored or discounted an invoice, that invoice is actually a receivable to them. So they do hold the right to assign it to another bank, NBFC.
If I have an invoice which has been accepted for payment, I have a right to receive money. A right to receive money is like a property rights. All property rights are transferable. By default, every property right is transferable. Like I can sell rest of my properties. I can sell my receivables as well. There's absolutely no bar on transferability of receivables. Question is what my intent was. Was it my intent to transfer absolute right in the receivable so as to make the buyer the absolute owner of the receivable, or was I simply looking at raising money on the security of the receivable? So secured borrowing or secured lending transactions versus assignment transactions, there will be shades of difference. I mean, the difference may not be very, very easily visible, but you need to go into the intent of the transaction. Intent कैसे मालूम चलता है? I think intent smell करना पड़ता है, सूंघना पड़ता है. What is the smell of this contract? सूंघने का कोई rule तो मेरे ख्याल से बन नहीं सकता. So it's subjective exercise. But yeah, that's what you need to do to understand what was the intent of parties. Was it intended to operate like a sale of receivable, or was it intended to operate like a borrowing against receivable? I got some more questions here in the chat box. Bhashan asked me if the Bhashan says if the creditor and assignee have different allocation logic as to how to account the same to the debtor. Different allocation, apportionment, probably what I'm not sure what Bhashan might be meaning, but probably is he meaning apportionment of the, I mean appropriation or apportionment, meaning what? That for example, an unspecific amount is being paid by the debtor to the creditor. How do we appropriate it? So basically, assignee's appropriation cannot be different from the assigner's appropriation. Appropriation rules or allocation rules will be the same as in the original contract. That would mean if the original contract says money will first go towards interest, later on towards principal, or money will be allocated or appropriated in certain manner, the same appropriation rules will be applicable to the assignee. Assignee cannot get a different or a better right than the assigner. Whatever are the rights of assigner get assigned to the assignee. Sanjay Wadhwaji, good evening, Sanjay ji. And Sanjay ji has a question in leasing. AOR. AOR stands for transaction based rentals are assigned, but GST only is that's a good question. So right, in rentals are assigned, but the obligation. So I think what he's basically going to say is that if I've done a lease transaction and I'm transferring the lease rentals, I'm transferring the so-called receivables. Am I transferring the GST obligation as well? No, because the GST obligation is that on the vendor. I am the seller, I am the vendor, so GST still continues to be my obligation. Therefore, I'm not transferring the rights over the GST. That's a typical structure in case of all assignment of receivables. Taxes on the contract will normally stay with, for example, somebody is on a sale of let's say sale of goods. Now, sale of goods obviously has a GST component. The GST has to be anyway paid separately to the government. So GST is not, you are actually transferring the receivable, but GST is to be paid separately. Therefore, mostly the GST obligation stays with the transferor itself. Transferor may not be able to sell the GST. There's no question of transfer of GST component. Anand Verma ji also the question is notice of assignment is not. This is a very good question. Notice of assignment. If the question is on the notice of assignment, so I'll park this question for a while because I'm anyway coming back to the conditions of transfer of property. Apurva's question we anyway heard. So Sunanda has can non-transferable OCDs be novated? Debentures. Debentures are debentures. Question basically is optionally convertible debentures. Can they be transferred or can they be novated? If the debenture itself was non-transferable, can it be novated? Now, I'm guessing that the question is a very interesting question though. But I would have actually said this is not part of our discussion today. But I'll very quickly say so. Debentures are by default transferable. By default, every security is transferable. That's the whole idea of creating a security. But if terms of issue said that debentures are non-transferable, then the terms of issue will also have to provide a mechanism of transferring. Because this otherwise becomes a clog on equity of redemption. But if the only thing I can do is to wait indefinitely for debentures to redeem and I cannot exit at all, that is typically called a clog on the equity of redemption. I should actually be able to redeem my position and make an exit if I need to. I cannot be stopped from exiting. So debenture holder cannot be told that you cannot exit. You will not get your money because the debenture is not still due for redemption. You cannot therefore get your money and you cannot exit anyway because the debenture is non-transferable. So you must provide for an alternative mechanism. Ambika Megani has a question: how can we determine whether the assignment of receivables is secured or unsecured? No, I'm saying assignment of receivables is whether assignment is for the purpose of a sale or for the purpose of creating security. I said you can assign receivables for creating a security, like we were talking about example of invoice financing. The idea of invoice financing is whether is it intended to be sold outright or is it simply money that we want to raise on the security of the invoice. That would mostly be visible. So I think later in some point of time we'll be discussing the so-called true sale questions. That's once again there. This question will crop up. So I'll park this right now and come back on this. Rohit Mansukani has a question: how can security interest in contingent receivables be assigned? Receivable itself is contingent. A contingent contract becomes enforceable contract only when the contingency is removed. I mean, the typical understanding of a contingent contract is till the contingency remains, the contract also remains kind of contingent contract. To my mind, I mean, this is something which might require further research. Impromptu answer right now would be, if my contract itself is contingent, then the receivable will have to wait. I can transfer it now because that's like transferring a future receivable, but the future receivable will operate or will become an asset only when the contingency gets removed. Shikha Kalraji, hi Shikha ji, and she has a question: can you please elaborate on proportional transfer, for example, trade receivables financing supported by trade insurance, when the insurance policy requires retention? What are the considerations there? Shikha ji, you are from the world of trade receivables financing, definitely. So the point is that, as I mentioned earlier, that normally speaking, common law systems normally speaking have not, not typically favored a proportional transfer. Proportional transfers are typically not favored by common law jurisdictions. However, over a period of time, this is something which has generally been accepted world over now, that even proportional transfers are good transfers. So partial transfers or proportional transfers, as long as the part that you're transferring is clear. For example, in trade receivable, you're transferring the receivable minus the insurance. You're transferring some component minus some other component. That creates a sort of a joint ownership, right? But that is fine. Because the only implication of that would be that should it ever be required to bring a suit against the debtor, then both the parties will have to join in the litigation. That's a very, very fine, I would say fine legal point. It will not mostly be of any hindrance in real life situations. So to my mind, let me assure you that though this might be a bit, legal nuance, but the nuance will not mostly affect transactions in real life. So to my mind, there will be no issues even if there's a partial transfer. Vivek Nevatiya ji has a question to ask: can a landowner assign receivable under a GDA? Then it's now GDA. Vivek ji, once again, the question would be: is it simply a receivable or is it a mutual obligation? If the question is, can somebody assign JV rights A joint venture is once again a case of partnership. It's a question of partnership itself. So transfer of partnership interest, well, that's like once again you're not transferring a receivable, you're transferring the partnership interest itself. And there might be issues, and there are actually Supreme Court rulings to talk about transfer of JV interest itself. That is by itself a separate issue. But the question is, if I have a receivable from a joint venture, from the joint venture I have a receivable, money has become payable to me, can I transfer that? More so, can I transfer that without the concurrence of the JVA counterparty? If it's a receivable, my answer will be no. If it's a JV right, which is a question of mutual obligation, bundle of obligations, I would typically have issues in transferability of contractual, transfer of benefits of the contract, no issue. But transfer of contract or joint venture right itself, that would be an issue. Anurag Mishra ji identified different invoice discounting and invoice factoring. I'm coming back to separately. I have parked this question of factoring. As I mentioned, factoring is quite intricate subject. I kept it purposely parked. I'll come back very, very quickly on that. So let me continue to go forward. And for assuring everyone here, the PPT, if all you wanted is the PPT will definitely be uploaded. I can assure you, you won't be a guarantee on that. I'm guaranteeing that the PPT will be uploaded. So please don't worry about the PPT. It will be there for sure. And I'm moving back on the PPT to discuss. We talked about now we just quickly discussed the English law about transfer of receivables and the source of the English law. So this is a bit finer screen here, but I'm guessing that you'll be able to see. That's where we're talking about borrower notification. So I'm reading from section 130 of the Transfer of Property Act, which is similar to section 136 of the English Law of Property Act. The section 130 of TP Act says that transfer of receivables, transfer of an actionable claim, whether with or without consideration, shall be effected only on execution of an instrument. Please understand, there are very important points here. Only on instrument in writing. So number one, what we need basically is execution of instrument in writing. For transfer of other assets, we don't need instrument in writing. If I want to transfer my computer, I want to transfer my car, I want to transfer my cell phone, I want to transfer any of my assets. What do I need? Do I need an instrument in writing? Can I do so without an instrument in writing? Of course I can. I went in the morning to buy milk pouches. I did not have an instrument in writing. The commercial invoice, if at all it comes, that's not an instrument of transfer. That's simply a receipt of money. That's a commercial document. There's nothing called instrument in writing for transfer of lots of movable properties. But when it comes to actionable claims, section 130 says shall be effected only by the execution of instrument in writing. That's part one. Part two, it goes to say shall be complete and effectual upon the execution of instrument, and thereupon all the rights and remedies of transferor, whether by your damages, etc., shall vest in transferee, whether such notice as is hereafter provided has been given or not, provided that every dealing with debt or actionable claim by debt or other person, blah blah blah, will be valid. So basically, what if so it says notice of this must also be given in writing. Shall be factual, that all the rights and remedies, whether by your damages, etc., shall vest in transferee, whether such notice of the transfer as is hereinafter provided to be given or not. So the law is providing for a notice of transfer as well. So there are two things that we need legally for transfer of an actionable claim. A, we need written instrument. And B, we need notice of transfer. So that allows us to come back on a very important point. In real life, we have whole lot of assignment of receivables, and we do not notify the borrower that the loan has been transferred. Neither do we do so in India, nor do we do so elsewhere in the world. We don't have anything called notification to the borrower. Think of, for example, microfinance loans. A microfinance company has transferred 10,000 loans to a buyer. An NBFC has transferred 1,000 loans to a buyer. A bank has transferred non-performing loans to an ARC. Sometimes we notify the borrower. Like in case of ARC purchase, the bank purposely might go and notify the borrower with an intent of, kind of creating a scare there. But in most cases, when we transfer receivables, we do not notify the borrower at all. So one of the conditions of transfer of receivables, as we noted in section 130 of Indian Act, 136 of UK Act, is that there must be a notification of the borrower as well. But we are not doing that. So in absence of borrower notification, what is the impact? This is precisely what is called equitable assignment. Equitable assignment basically means what? Between the assigner and the assignee, between the transferor and the transferee, the transaction of transfer is complete. But between the transferor and the debtor, the transfer is not complete. And please understand that it's extremely intuitive to understand. I have money to receive from X. I have transferred the money to Y. X is not aware of. I have not told X about it. How can X, who is not even aware that the receivable has been transferred, how can he be bound to recognize the rights of Y? That would mean he knows me as the recipient and he is entitled to make payment to me only. So the impact of not notifying the obligor, the impact of obligor notification not being there. In actual parlance, we call such transfers silent transfers. That is, we don't notify the obligors. The transfer is silently done without notifying the obligor. The impact is what? The impact is that if the debtor pays the transferor in absence of a notice, the obligor still gets a valid discharge. The obligor will be discharged from his obligation. He was not even aware of a transfer, and he therefore made a payment to the original recipient, and therefore he gets a valid discharge. That's the implication of a so-called silent assignment or equitable assignment. I must add here that that's a common practice world over, and countries have now brought into force some kind of a mechanism for a public notification of an assignment. And many of you who are in financial sector, you will understand that now we have something called CERSAI, Central Registry for recording such transactions. That central registry is a place where we will go and notify this assignment. So I have not notified the borrower though, but I have done a public notification of the transfer. So that itself now serves to complete the transaction of assignment. There are now corresponding provisions in the Securitization Act also, SURFACI Act as well, which says that if I have done registration with the integrated registry, irrespective of notice to the debtor, the transaction of transfer is still complete. So in a way, the requirement of borrower notification as it exists in section 130 has now been modified by the SURFACI Act, which is talking about public notification. Now, please don't start asking questions about CERSAI because that by itself becomes a very different subject. I have a lot of time these days, so if you want me to take separate session on SURFACI, I'll be happy to take it. मैंने मेरे पास काम धाम कुछ नहीं है, मेरे को कोई टॉपिक बोलेंगे, मैं आज के दिन वेबिनार लेने के लिए तैयार बैठा हूँ. जैसे आप देख रहे हैं कि मेरे पास खूब टाइम बड़ा आराम से इस तरह के वेबिनार लिए जा रहा हूँ. Okay. Basic loan transfer of actionable claims. I was talking about what's this provision of section 130 of TP Act. I'm sure it might have occurred in your mind as to how is it that a TP Act is contained in this provision. Transfer of Property Act, as we understand, pertains to transfer of real estate. So how come the provision about transfer of receivables is sitting in TP Act? TP Act is not limited to immovable properties. TP Act deals with certain procedures for intangible properties as well. That's how TP Act has a provision on actionable claim. But the word actionable claim, the way it's defined in TP Act, the definition could be very, very narrow. For example, let's just see section, the TP Act. It says claim to a debt other than a debt secured by mortgage of immovable property or by hypothecation or pledge of movable property. A claim which is other than a debt secured by mortgage of immovable property. That would mean if the debt is secured by mortgage of immovable property, for example, residential mortgage loans, it will not be covered by actionable claim. If I have a receivable backed by hypothecation, say car loan, that will also not be an actionable claim. If the receivable is backed by pledge, that will also not be an actionable claim. So actionable claim, the definition, it therefore stays limited to unsecured loans only, which is mostly not commonly the case in most of the transactions. So does that mean that the process of TP Act is applicable only where we are talking about transfer of unsecured claims? Now here, my point of view is that the TP Act talks about general principles. The two general principles of TP Act, namely instrument of transfer and notification to borrower, both are generalized requirements. They should not be limited to transactions in actionable claims only. That would mean even where the property, the receivable in question, is not an actionable claim as per law, it should still be deemed, it should be still deemed as if the process of TP Act is applicable to such transactions as well. And very, very quickly talking about problem, equitable assignment. Equitable assignment seems to be the norm. That's almost a norm in real life. The only issue is that if the seller, having transferred a receivable, now transfer the receivable, the same receivable to somebody else as well, then maybe the buyer, the second buyer who gets a perfected right, who gives the notification, he might actually get a superior right over the original assignee. I would very, very quickly talk about the factoring law. As I mentioned, the factoring law is an extremely vague law. This was passed in 2011. If you were to question, why was this law passed in India? The Factoring Act of 2011, why was it passed? Why did India have a factoring law? Was the factoring law meant to regulate factoring companies? But it was the presumption that there were a lot of factoring business in India and we wanted to curb or regulate the business, therefore we had factoring law. Reality ऐसी थी कि before this law came, we had some 30 odd factoring companies. Over a period of time after this law was passed, number of factoring entities has consistently come down. Very, very surprising that the intent of law was to promote factoring. It's an admitted position. The factoring law was passed on the recommendations of a global body called UNCITRAL. UNCITRAL has a model factoring law. The idea was basically to pass a factoring law based on UNCITRAL model. That was an admitted position, but the way the factoring law came, it became a regulatory law. माने आज के दिन कोई बोल दे कि the COVID relief activity of the government of India will be regulated by a law. अब इसमें promotion चाहिए कि regulation चाहिए? That's a question. Where what we need is promotion, we start regulating. The impact might be completely counterintuitive. So the factoring law had a regulatory overtone. It was, heavy with regulatory slant, and therefore in practice the law is only going to discourage factoring transactions. That's a, time and again we tried pointing this out to regulators as well, that all you have achieved by factoring law is discourage factoring transactions. Now the way this stands is, and it's, I said, it's very difficult to make out the meaning of this law. So I would not say or claim that I understand what this law means. I definitely will not. I would be extremely respectful to somebody who says that he understands Factoring Act. But I would have all respect for somebody who can say that he understands the Factoring Act. At least I don't understand it. So let me explain the meaning of this. What this law says, and that's a very important section, is section 3. First, understand, factoring is a assignment. Assignment is, factor means an NBFC or other company which does factoring business. And factoring business is the business of acquiring receivables by assignment. And assignment is defined as transfer by agreement of undivided interest of assigner in any receivable due from a debtor. So if we have an assignment of a receivable, you are engaged in factoring business. If you are engaged in factoring business, then you are a factor. And then comes section 3, which says you cannot be a factor unless you are principally engaged in factoring business. But it's almost like saying that unless you are a major, you attain the age of majority, unless you are 18 years, you will not get a driving license. And you cannot learn driving unless you are 18 years. But it's almost like saying that you cannot be in factoring business unless you are principally engaged in factoring business. So principally engaged is not something that can happen overnight. I have to start from a scratch and then come to a stage of principality. I cannot be principally engaged in factoring business from the day go, from the very first day. But the way the law is constructed, it seems to suggest that I have to be principally engaged in factoring business to be a factor. I cannot start factoring business unless I'm a factor, and I cannot start factoring business unless I'm registered as a factor. If registration is a prerequisite, how do I reach that stage of principality unless I start from a scratch and attain principality? So that's the complexity or the kind of intrigue of the law. But question asked was, what's the difference between invoice discounting versus invoice factoring? If I'm acquiring the invoice, if I'm basically buying the receivable under the invoice, I mean lending against the invoice, I'm simply giving a loan. But if I'm buying the invoice itself, the idea basically is that that's a case of assignment. If you are in the business of assignment of invoices, then it seems that the factoring law is applicable. Under factoring law, you cannot be engaged in factoring business, principally engaged in factoring business. unless you are registered as a factor. That would mean you need a NBFC factor registration. How many NBFC factors do we have in the country? I don't have the exact count, but to my mind, it's definitely less than 20. There are lots of factoring entities which are located overseas. They are doing factoring business in India. Dangaliya se kar rahe, माने अच्छा खासा business कर रहे हैं. But within the country, domestic factoring companies, to my mind, will be less than 20. I think active ones will be less than 10. But I mean, typically the factoring companies might be something like. So all as I mentioned earlier, all that the factoring law has actually done is to discourage factoring business. I do understand that people have questions on factoring. Let me just quickly give an idea of what all we have still to discuss. We still have not even talked about direct assignments and the securitization or the true sale conditions. So we have quite a lot still to go. Therefore, please do ration your questions looking at how much time you still have at hand. मेरे पास तो कोई काम धाम कुछ नहीं है, तो मैं जितना बोलेंगे उतना बेटर रहूँगा. But others might definitely have things to do. So please do ration your questions based on what you think is instantly relevant. So I guess there are questions on factoring. Ravinder ji says there are below 10 factoring companies. I completely said, I mean, I was talking about below 20, but correct me and say there are less than 10 companies in factoring business. And that's the net result of Factoring Act, is that over a period of time, the number of factoring companies has consistently come down. It's not something which is that's the achievement of factoring law. Anyways, so I think back to the point, can we move on therefore? And we have quite a lot still to cover, so let me just move on. I'm coming to the very important subject of true sale. True sale, I can understand sale, you're selling something. We are not happy by saying I'm making a sale. We add a prefix and say, am I truly selling? Am I doing a true sale? I sell my old car. No one asks me, am I truly selling my car? I just sell my car, that's enough. I sell my computer, I buy a computer. No one asks me, have you truly bought the computer? Nobody asks me the true question. Nobody asks me to prove the truth of my sale or purchase in normal cases. So why is it that when in context of financial transactions, we are putting this question and say, hey, you are selling though, but are you truly selling? ये true का question क्यों आ रहा है? क्यों हमारी नियत पे शक हो रहा है कि मैंने सेल तो किया, लेकिन क्या नियत मेरी सेल करने की थी? ये नियत पे अविश्वास क्यों हो रहा है? इसके पीछे रीजन क्या? देखिए, once again, put the transaction of a securitization or so-called direct. Many of you are from financial business, so I'm sure you are able to understand. In a transaction of securitization or direct assignment, what is happening? I'm an NBFC. I've given loan to 1,000 borrowers. Till now, I was collecting the receivables. I was collecting month on month. Now I've entered into a DA transaction. I've transferred the receivables to a bank. Who does the collections now? I was collecting the receivables till yesterday. Even after the so-called DA transactions, I will continue to collect the receivables as I was doing earlier. That would mean, in terms of my interface with the borrower, I'll exactly keep doing whatever I was doing. What I was doing till yesterday and what I would do from tomorrow onwards, there will be absolutely no difference at all. So there will be no physical manifestation of the sale at all. I took the example of selling my car. If I sell my car will no more be seen in my garage. It will just disappear from my garage the day I sell. मतलब ऐसा सेल समझिए जो गाड़ी मैंने बेच दिया लेकिन मेरे गैराज में खड़ी है, मैं ही उसको रन कर रहा हूँ, मैं ही उसका फायदा उठा रहा हूँ. तो then the question is, आपके नियत का सेल करने की थी क्या? Have you truly sold or simply you're doing a make believe sale? So here the case is, I've sold the receivables. However, I'm still doing the collections myself. Not only am I doing the collections, when it comes to risk and rewards also, the excess spread, that is the receivables over and above what I promised to pay to my buyer, the excess spread still also continues to flow back to me. To a large extent, even the risk of default also stays with me. I mean, this is intricacy of securitization, so I will not maybe get into that intricacy right now in this particular context. But most of you are in financial business understand that substantial extent of risk are also with me, rewards are also with me, physical interface with the customer is also with me. So what sort of a sale have I done there The receivables continue to stay with me in every manner. So is it truly a sale or simply a make-believe or a so-called purported sale transaction, which is actually not a true sale? So what's the truth of the sale transaction? That's exactly why we come into the question of true sale. So what exactly is true sale question? We should be doing a sale, and the sale must be truly a sale. It must be in true spirit, in true substance. It must be a sale transaction. It must not be merely a borrowing transaction. Ambika Begani had earlier asked a question, how do we distinguish between a sale versus a borrowing transaction? So my answer is, we actually smell it. Smell करके बताते हैं कि ये truly sale है कि नहीं. I'm not meaning to be funny here. What I'm trying to say is that the test is subjective. There cannot be an objective criteria of distinguishing between whether your true intent was to sell or was it to simply raise funding. We are surely raising funding. We're definitely raising money. But the impact is raising money, or the intent was also to simply raise money and not transfer the asset. That's the question that we're asking when we're asking the true sale question. True sale is not all about getting a true sale opinion from people who are in financial world. The easiest thing we do is to go to a law firm and seek a true sale opinion. True sale opinion तो देवान हाउसिंग वाले केस में भी थी, जहाँ पे I mean lots of questions were raised about the truth of the sale. Please understand, in every case that goes to a bankruptcy court where there would probably be a question on the sale, there will be some true sale opinion. There will be some lawyer who might have said that this is a true sale. So the fact that you have an opinion from a law firm does not mean that the sale is true. Ask yourself the question, is the transaction meeting the time-tested principles of true sale? What are the time-tested principles of true sale? I must once again warn that these are subjective issues, and mere existence of one of these factors does not kill the true sale. But I cannot say that merely because one of these factors is present, your sale is not a true sale. This subjective question has to be judged by holistic circumstance. You need to see the totality of the transaction to see whether what you're doing is truly a sale or merely a financial contract. So first point, despite the sale, originator continues to make payments on fixed dates irrespective of collections. Whether you collect money from borrowers or not, you continue to make payments irrespective of collections on pre-fixed dates. That is, the buyer of the receivable is not even concerned with whether you collected money from borrowers or not. What have you done? You actually done a transfer of receivable. Have you created an obligation to pay the so-called assignee, or have you simply transferred your asset? In case of transfer of an asset, where is the question of the assigner, the transferor, being obligated to make payment of a fixed amount month on month? Because if there's a complete disconnect between what you are collecting and what you're paying to the assignee, you are paying from your treasury, then that's actually a borrowing type obligation. It cannot be called an assignment of receivables. Similarly, if the originator or the seller pays a fixed amount irrespective of collections, there also the intent seems to be clearly seems to be one of borrowing, not one of sale. There is an unlimited recourse against the seller. The seller has unlimited recourse. I must quickly point out here that the rulings of the past say that recourse itself is not destructive. Recourse by itself is not destructive of a true sale. But if what we have is a generalized recourse, that would mean generically, irrespective of whether or what reason the receivable was not paid, the assignee can look at me and ask me to make payment for the receivables. That is a characteristic of a loan transaction. So once again, Ambika Begani's question, in case of so-called invoice financing, how do we know that we actually sold the receivable versus borrowed money? If the so-called buyer of the receivable has an unlimited recourse back at the seller, then the transaction is mostly a loan transaction and not a sale. Intent is not one of sale, intent is one of borrowing. Transferee realizes a fixed amount. I can definitely understand there are lots of questions here. I think I'm touching a very sensitive question, so lots of questions have come. Hold on for a second, I'll come back to you. Transferee realizes a fixed amount and returns the difference to the originator. This is what we call transfer of excess spread, which is once again very common in all securitization transactions. The entire excess spread flows back to the seller. In case of transaction of a sale, I have sold the receivables. If I've sold the receivables, where is the question of excess spread coming back to me? So if the excess spread has to flow back to me, it has to flow back in a justifiable way. But in a straight transaction of sale, I have transferred all right, title and interest in the receivables. In that case, what I'm therefore saying is that I have transferred only some interest. I have retained interest as well. I cannot say that I've transferred everything. So in case I'm wanting to retain excess spread, I would say, except for the retained interest, I have transferred everything else. I have a retained interest, so it's a partial transfer. I have transferred everything except the retained interest. Amount paid by the transferee had nothing to do with the value of the receipt. The transferee pays a particular amount irrespective of the value of receipt. And that could be transaction does not look like an arm's length transaction. Another very important point is the seller has a right to buy back. If the seller has sold something, but the seller retains a call option, a callback option or buyback option, that would mean what? Taking once again the example of sale of my car, I sell my car to somebody and I say that I retain an unlimited right to buy back the car. That whenever I feel like I can buy back the car. What sort of a sale is this? But I cannot contend that I've conveyed absolute right in the buyer if I retain a right of buyback. Later on, I'll just have a small slide to say that the only right I can have is what is called a cleanup call option. Cleanup call option is the only call option that I can retain. Otherwise, if I've transferred an asset and I'm retaining right to buy back, that also militates against the true sale feature. Next one I'm going to say is extremely important, and I'm sure this is going to be offensive for some people in the room because this is a practice that a lot of people have in the country. Servicing fees are inadequate. I have transferred receivables. I still continue as a servicer. I'm servicing what? Am I servicing my asset now? I have sold the asset. I'm still servicing. Whose asset am I servicing? I'm servicing the buyer's asset. If I'm servicing the buyer's asset, I'm actually servicing a third-party asset. As a third-party servicer, will I agree to service an asset without being paid arm's length servicing fees? Now look at the reality of the real world here. We see a transaction worth 100 crores of receivables being transferred. What is the servicing fee? 100 rupees per month. Ridiculous. If the transaction has completely non-arm's length servicing fees are completely non-arm's length. That would be the servicing fees completely detached from being a real servicing fee. To my mind, very surely there might be a challenge on the truth of the sale. True sale question might definitely be raised. I'm guessing some people might be wondering who will raise this true sale question. Why would somebody raise a true sale question? When or by who will the question be raised? Let me say here, if you have bought some receivables from an NBFC and the NBFC goes into insolvency, are you all saying NBFCs cannot go into insolvency? NBFCs have, I mean, in the past also they got into insolvency. I think in future some more might also get insolvency. The NBFC has transferred the receivable to a bank and the NBFC goes into insolvency. And unfortunately, I am, let's say, the insolvency professional managing the insolvency. If I understand what the NBFC has done, I'll surely rake up this question. I'll definitely rake up the question that so-called sale was actually not a sale. Because by doing that, I can bring back what has gone away from the books of the NBFC. Please understand that receivables which have been transferred have actually moved away from the liquidation estate. They are not part of my estate anyway. If I am the insolvency professional or I am the liquidator, my rights are curtailed because I cannot touch those assets which have actually been signed out. So I'll be failing in doing my job if I do not question such sales which are not true sales. So every righteous insolvency professional or liquidator will have to question sales which are not true sale. True sale questions do arise in insolvency. But the point I must therefore say is that international experience very clearly says that in every major bankruptcy anywhere in the world, 2007 to 2015, there were lots of major bankruptcies. In every major bankruptcy, the question of whether the sale of receivables was a true sale or not, the question has always been raised. So don't be sanguine. don't be kind of assured that if you are the buyer of the receivable, true sale question will not be asked. And the fact that you have a true sale opinion is not going to help, because there's a lawyer on the other side also will question the truth of the sale. So true sale question will be asked if one or more of these factors are present. And next factor, I'm saying the originator's records are not marked to indicate assets which have been sold off. Normally what we have is a segregation of bank accounts as well. The bank account itself gets segregated. If you don't have separation of bank account, at least do have separation of the records. And finally, the payments are commingled. Commingling is also to an extent unavoidable, because some extent of commingling will happen. But the question is, as soon as situation or as soon as the opportunity arose, did you actually try to segregate or dissect assets which have actually been assigned? I can see lots of questions were raised on this. Let me just quickly come to the questions. I have a question asked by Sanjay Wadwaji once again. Recourse is on the obligor and not on the originator. And recourse is surely on the, there is no doubt that the recourse is on the obligor. You always have recourse on the obligor, because what I'm actually buying is the right against the obligor. So I have a right on the obligor. Question is, do I have a right against the originator? If I have a right to claim the money from the originator, as if the originator was obliged to pay, then that is, and that's a generic, recourse against the originator may come because of failure of reps and warrant. Failure of representations and warranties, complicated word. I'll for short say reps and warranties. If there were reps and warranties, and the reps and warranties have been breached, and therefore the assignee has a recourse back on the assigner, that is still fine. That same as saying I bought a car and the car turned out to be defective, I can throw the car back on the vendor. That's a very common thing. Question is, irrespective, that's a generalized right. If I don't collect the money from the obligor, I'll collect the money from you. That would mean I actually borrowed money. The originator actually borrowed money. He did not sell the receipt. So that is the way Sanjay Wadwaji's question will be tackled. I have a question from Pratik Jariwalji saying, hi sir, if we entered assignment transaction, irrespective of collection, we keep paying on fixed date, would it be breach of DOA? It wouldn't be a breach. I wouldn't call it a breach of contract. What I'm saying is, if somebody wanted to question the truth of the sale, it will be, are we breaching a law? Surely not. You're not breaching a law. Are you doing a legal breach? No. Question is, that's not a legal breach. It's not a contractual breach. Question is, you believe that this is a case of assignment of receivables. You were happy thinking this is a case of assignment of receivables. If somebody wanted to question saying that this so-called sale is not truly a sale, but actually is a financial transaction, I think I'll have my way. If I was, as I mentioned, in situation of bankruptcy, let's say in any situation of distress, if somebody wanted to contend or contest that the so-called sale is not truly a sale, it's a financial, it's a mere funding transaction, the transaction is susceptible to such a challenge. Kavita Karwaji has a question. In a securitization transaction, if fixed deposit is provided as security in terms of servicing agreement, a charge required to be created on the FD under section 77. To my mind, creating a lien, I'm not sure, Kavita ji, but I think I'm not very sure of that. So you can maybe separately email me. I'll have it checked by some of my colleagues as well. But to best of my recollection, if it's a lien on a particular amount, I'll put a lien. To my mind, it should actually require that the charge registration should be required, but I would like to check it out. So if you want, you can kindly email me separately. Rohit Mansugani ji once again has a question: true sale guarantee given by seller or a group company. So if the seller has given generalized guarantee, could be up to a limited amount. Guarantee itself is not destructive. Like I mentioned earlier, recourse by itself is not destructive. Unlimited recourse could be. You can see lots of case law. I'll share the presentation shortly. As I said, the presentation will be put up on the website as well. You can see the PPT slide. We mentioned a very old English case. Bezos Furniture Mart is a US case. And then we have an English case called George Inglefield. Very old ruling. George Inglefield. There are lots of rulings thereafter. These rulings go to say that recourse by itself is not destructive, but unlimited recourse coupled with other factors could give a hint that this transaction was not intended to operate as a sale. it was merely a financial transaction. So back to the point of guarantee, whether you have a recourse or you have an unlimited guarantee, think of a seller who sells receivables and the seller says, I am guaranteeing all payments. So what am I actually doing? I'm raising money. My intent is not one of selling the receivable. My intent is to create an obligation to pay. If what I've done is to create an obligation to pay, then that is indicative of a financial transaction and not a sale of receivables. So I think at this stage, let's think of moving back to the remaining part of the presentation. Good thing is that I have not been able to talk about the RBI's guidelines at all. However, I must appreciate your patience, and you are still in the room. There are some 60% still in the room, though it's 7 o'clock already. So let me very, very quickly come to say the RBI guidelines. Bit fast on the RBI guidelines on securitization versus direct assignment. For those who are from financial sector, you clearly understand that in India we have two things: DA, direct assignment, versus securitization. World over, do you have something called DA? World over, the practice of loan sales is far bigger than securitization. In my very first slide when I started, I said the transfer of loan business is approximately $6 trillion business. But nowhere else in the world is loan sale taken as a part of securitization. India is a unique case where when we talk about securitization volumes, we include direct assignments also. Because in India, the way direct assignment has flourished, the way direct assignment has actually come about, it's come as an alternative form of securitization. Based on what suits the regulatory requirements, they can think of securitization versus DA. So nowhere else in the world will somebody run a comparison between securitization versus DA. In India, we do it because practically in India, people choose one of these two, and they are seen as very close proxies of each other. Therefore, the comparison. So very quickly comparing the two, and I'm guessing there are a lot of people here who are from the financial sector, so you would understand that very quickly. The legal format of both will be one of assignment. In securitization, we are assigning. In DA also, we are assigning. Assigning to who? In case of securitization, we are assigning to a special purpose vehicle. In case of a DA, we are assigning to the assignee. In case of securitization, you are assigning to a trustee. Some people might actually get confused. In DA, you might still have a investor representative. You don't have a trustee. There's no scope or no need for a trustee in DA. In DA, you are the buyer. You might have a representative. There might be some trustee acting as your representative, but that's not a trustee. Whereas in securitization, the transfer is to a trustee because there's a trust in between. That's a special purpose vehicle. So there's an SPV in securitization, whereas in case of a DA, you are the buyer, so assignment is directly in your favor. Is the true sale condition required in case of both? Answer is yes. The true sale condition is required in both the cases. In case of a securitization transaction, you need a pool of receivables. The guidelines of RBI say there must be a homogeneous pool of receivables. In case of a DA, you can have sale of one single loan. Bankruptcy remoteness. Is the transaction bankruptcy remote? Of course, yes. If it's properly structured true sale transaction, the transaction would be bankruptcy remote. The need for bankruptcy remoteness is as strong in case of a DA as in case of securitization. Will there be presence of a special purpose vehicle in case of securitization? Yes. In case of a DA, no. And once again, reiterating that you might sometimes have a trustee. I mean, you might have somebody acting as a trustee there as well, but the role is that of a trustee, not that. The role is that of an investor representative, not that of a buyer. Can there be multiple investors in securitization? The idea basically is to have multiple participations. In case of a DA, normally it's a single buyer, one single buyer. Nature of investment made by the investor. What is the investor buying? In case of securitization, the investor is buying so-called pass-through certificates. By the way, I must quickly say that in India, the format is one of pass-through certificates. That's not necessarily the rule world over, but well, in India, it's mostly PTCs. So the PTC is a security of the special purpose vehicle. So the investor is buying a security. what the investor is buying will appear as a security in the books of the investor. In case of a DA, the investor is buying a loan. So the transaction will appear as a loan in the books of the buyer in case of a DA transaction. The minimum holding period will be applicable in both the cases. And also the minimum risk retention will be applicable in both the cases, though in case of a direct assignment, there cannot be a credit enhancement. Somehow, for whatever reason, the RBI guidelines have not permitted credit enhancements in case of a direct assignment. In case of securitization, credit enhancement is the norm. That's how the business moves world over. It's the norm. But in case of a direct assignment, because it's a straight sale of loan from somebody to somebody, the credit enhancement by the seller is not permitted in case of a deal. It's not allowed at all. Therefore, there might be risk retention, but that would mostly be on pari passu basis only. So there's a 90-10 transaction. 90% receivables come to you, 10% receivables are held back with the originator. That has to be pari passu. There is no way by which the assigner can provide credit enhancements in case of a DA transaction. Will there be a rating? In case of securitization, mostly yes. In case of a DA, there's basically what is called a loss estimation. There's no rating at all. There's mostly a loss estimation. Upfront encashment of profits, well, in case of securitization, mostly possible. In case of a DA also, it would mostly be possible. That's an accounting question, so I'll park it right here. And maybe at some stage we'll probably discuss that. Stress testing is required in both the cases. Servicing fee has to be there in both the cases. Also, the cap on investment. In case of a securitization transaction, the originator cannot hold more than 20%. In case of a DA, there's no such cap. There's no such limit. Exposure of the investor on concentration norms as regards exposure of the investor will not be applicable in either case. Accounting in the books of investor, in case of securitization, it's purchase of a security. In case of a DA, it's purchase of a loan. Therefore, mark-to-market of fair valuation norms, fair valuation requirements, in case of PTCs will surely be applicable, depending on what accounting standard are you covered by. In case of a direct assignment, if you are buying a loan, then it can still qualify for amortized cost treatment. Capital relief, that is relief from regulatory capital requirements. In case of securitization, because it's a first loss support granted by the originator, so the capital will stand eaten up to the extent of first loss fees. Very, very quickly clarifying this. If the originator has provided a first loss support of, let's say, 8%, to the extent of 8%, the regulatory capital of the originator is eroded. The capital is written down to the extent of the first loss support provided by the originator. In case of a DA, because there is no case of a first loss support at all, there is no question of, capital erosion. Therefore, the capital relief is much higher in case of a DA than it is in case of a PTC transaction. Pricing is based on rating in case of PTCs. In case of DA, the pricing has to be based on the risk inherent in the transaction. Securitization transactions are not, relatively not as easy as DA. DA is very easy. There was a tax pass-through issue. Earlier, that issue has now been eliminated because of income tax amendment. Distribution tax is not applicable anymore now. Off-balance sheet treatment. I must very quickly say, in case of securitization, based on the practices prevalent in the country, off-balance sheet treatment for ETC transactions, for securitization transactions is difficult, but off-balance sheet treatment for DA transactions is extremely common, very, very common. We had some questions. We had some hands going up as well. We had some questions. So also, I understand that it's about 7:15, so there might be time to wind up very quickly, but let me just quickly see the questions. Somebody was raising a hand, so if maybe, yeah, Ash, I've unmuted you, so you can maybe, if you want, you can speak the question.
Hi, sir. Ashutosh here. Ashutosh from Edelweiss. Hi. I just had one small question. This SPV consolidated, I presume you mean to say that if there's a trust of which, let's say I'm a beneficiary. So, for example, if an NBFC sells to an SPV, a trust, and then still stays as a beneficiary, residual beneficiary, is that what you're talking about?
Right. So, Ash, okay, consolidation could be from accounting perspective. consolidation could be from legal perspective. Legal perspective, I mean, consolidation from legal point of view is a different principle, so I'll maybe not get into that right now. Consolidation from legal point of view is what is called substantive consolidation. Very rare situation, like you could recall Videocon ke case mein NCLT has done that. That's a very, very rare situation. So let's for a minute park that. Supposing that doesn't happen. So then we're talking about accounting consolidation. Accounting consolidation, that's an accounting issue. So it maybe allow me 5 more minutes to come to accounting question. I understand that we have actually overspent our time, so we quickly might have to wind up as well. I look forward to interacting with you all even in future. So I'll very, very quickly to the accounting issue now. Back on the point, Sanjay ji says in AOR. Sanjay ji, what exactly I mean by AOR? AOR is what? Negotiable instrument is a must. Is it distinguished? AOR, I'm wanting to understand. Okay. I think there are questions on stamp duty also. I'll have a chart of stamp duty placed on the screen sometime from now. And let me therefore very, very quickly come to the accounting question. In the meantime, maybe I can get Sanjay's question about what is AOR is referring to. But let me straight come to, we will not be spending more time on the guidelines of RBI. But and I'll come back very quickly. The stamp duty, what I've done actually is placed a list of states and the stamp duty different states. As you can see, stamp duties have been relaxed by lots of states on different transactions. So mostly we choose a state which is convenient. So mostly people these days choose Rajasthan as a convenient state. अभी तो आपको राजस्थान जाना नहीं है, मेरे ख्याल से कहीं नहीं जाना अभी तो. But as and when required, you can choose Rajasthan as the state of jurisdiction to do the registration of the transaction there. But let me just spend 2 minutes on the accounting of securitization. Unfortunately, it seems that I don't have a slide on that, but let me just very, very quickly talk about that. Right. So what's the accounting issue? As we do assignment or pass, will the receivables go off the books? Will the transactions stay on the books? Or will the receivables go off the books? On balance sheet treatment versus off balance sheet treatment. The distinction basically is if you have transferred risks and rewards of the asset, then the transaction actually goes off the books. If you're not transferred the risk and rewards, then the transaction stays on the books. So the complicated conditions of an accounting standard called Ind AS 109, which is very, very complicated and requires a much detailed discussion. So we'll probably might schedule another session sometime to discuss that. But in direct assignment transaction, putting the receivables off the books is much easier because the transfer of risk and rewards is completely pari passu. Whereas in securitization, because you're mostly holding the first loss piece and you're also getting the excess spread back. So the possibility of putting the asset off the books is also very low. Now that connects with the question of consolidation. So the issue is that if you are able to put the receivables off and you transfer it to the special purpose vehicle, then the question would be, will this special purpose vehicle require consolidation back with the originator? Will the originator be regarded as the entity controlling the affairs of the special purpose vehicle? As you understand, for consolidation, the relevant standard is Ind AS 110. Ind AS 110 talks about two things. You have a right to control and you are ability or right to control over the relevant activities. Relevant activities meaning those which produce the results of the enterprise. So if you are the question therefore will be, if you are the residual beneficiary, you have right to control the affairs of the trust, and in that case you are, if you're controlling the affairs of the trust, then the trust might require consolidation. So more important question from Indian perspective will be, will the transaction at all qualify for off-balance sheet purposes? If it does qualify, then the question will be, does the special purpose vehicle require consolidation? Mostly in case of SPVs, it is regarded as a structured entity. Structured entities come under Ind AS 112 rather than Ind AS 110. And under 112, we just have to make disclosures. We don't have to actually do consolidation. As for stamp duty, what we have done basically is we put a list of states and the duties in different states, which is something which is easily readable. Unfortunately, I think, well, we had tremendous interest. I must say that I'm extremely obliged for so much of interest in this particular session. I'm very, very obliged for that. We have actually run short of time because the time limit that we had actually agreed for this was only 7:15. So the system might be just going off now. Therefore, I might just have to conclude this very, very quickly. You are still able to contact me over email, so you have my email ID as well. So I'll be most happy to maybe interact with you later by way of emails as well. As of now, I must thank you all for being present today, and thank you all for taking time out of a very tense and otherwise strenuous situation. And for me, it's good use of